Welcome back from the first day after Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving break. We're happy to have you here today. We will be having people joining us throughout, I'm sure, because 100 people are registered and we don't have nearly that many in here today. But anyway, we're glad to have you here today. This is old hat now, our Zoom meetings, so the same guidelines apply. Please keep yourself on mute unless the speaker has asked people to come off mute to ask questions. And our trainer today is Theresa Sladek from Minnesota. I'm sure it's colder there than it is in Raleigh, where we're very cold today. But I think we are all over the state today. But we're happy to have her back. Most of you have probably seen her already. She's done a lot of trainings for us. And she's the national trainer for Northstar. So welcome, Theresa.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. Yeah, it's today it's actually somewhat warm for November in Minnesota. For us, I think it's getting up to 48. So we are kind of happy about that. That might be cold for you.
That's about where we are too.
Okay. so we're different ends of the spectrum. So today we're going to talk about looking at Northstar kind of from a learner perspective, and how to talk to learners about the various aspects of Northstar, and also kind of some things you might be. We'll review some things that we talked about the last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, and answer any questions you have. So like Dan said, if you have a question, feel free, you can unmute and ask it. You can put it in the chat. I love to hear your questions. It makes it more meaningful for you and more interesting for me. So don't hesitate to ask them and to interrupt me. That's totally fine. So today we're going to talk about talking to learners about why they might want to take an assessment. So, just kind of how do you bring that up? How do you make them see the value in that if they don't? We're going to review proctoring a little bit. So again, we can see what it's like from, your standpoint, but also from the learner, what they experience. We are going to talk about how do you explain the student dashboard, the learner dashboard to your learners. So if you're working with people who are maybe lower digital literacy, you might have to tell them what to do on the dashboard and how to get around in it. And then also you may also need to give people kind of a little tutorial on how to use the self-directed online learning. Again, if they're very low digital literacy, this is not something that they're experienced in. And then lastly, we're going to look at the instructor-led curricula. You may or may not be thinking about using it at your community college, but I want to give you the experience of what it's like to be a student going through the curricula. So you can see, I'll be the teacher, you'll be the learners, and we'll kind of go through it so you can see what it's like and what the student experience is like. So let's talk about assessments. So many people do have a lot of anxiety around testing. And sometimes if you'll suggest to them, take an assessment, they'll really, they'll think that people will often push back. And they might think that it's kind of a way of you judging them. So you really need to sometimes address this in a nice way. And talk about the reasons why, rather than just saying, do this Northstar assessment, couch it in terms that are going to make someone more willing to do it and put them more at ease. So initially, when you give an assessment, if you remember, you might give it as a pre-assessment where it's not proctored and you're just trying to see what someone knows. And so to tell them that, say, I'm not doing this this isn't like a judging situation. We just want to know what you already know and what else we can help you learn, so that you're giving them that, reason that they might want to take this assessment. and that it's going to save them time. So if they know some of the things already, they don't have to spend the time in a class or themselves learning it. They can move on to things that they don't know already. The other good thing to tell them about when they're going to take a pre-assessment is that they can then view their progress. So if they take the assessment initially, they'll see what they know, what they need to learn. They'll have some kind of instruction, and then they'll take it again and they can see what progress they've made. And this can often be very, very heartening to people when they can see that they've made progress, even if they don't get to the point where they're passing the assessment. They can still see what they've learned. Of course, the assessments can be used if they're looking to look for a job. They can put it on their resume or talk about it in their interview. Another reason that organizations use Northstar assessments is they are a really good way to practice computer-based test taking. So you may have learners who are going to be taking other more, I want to say, serious tests, or like let's say something that's going to really, like a GED prep, or a GED test would be an example. So something that has a lot more weight to it. And Northstar doesn't carry that, that seriousness. So people can start feeling comfortable with taking assessments on the computer by using Northstar. There's not a big detriment if they don't pass, whereas some other tests there might be. Just in terms of they have to pay money to take them, they have to put in significant time to take them. So many instructors will use this as a good way to practice that. I do also want to talk about test anxiety in general. So many of you might experience test anxiety. It's very, common. I happen to have my master's in counseling psychology, and so have talked a lot about anxiety in that role. And so another thing is, if you have people who are just anxious about taking the test, or taking tests in general, remind them to take deep breaths, to give themselves positive self-talk. So rather than saying, I can't do this, I'm really bad at this, I'm never going to be able to pass this, have the talk be more, I'm going to just do my best. We're going to see, they're going to help me learn what I need to know. I may know something and surprise myself. So again, kind of those grounding techniques to help people, because if you're really anxious going into a test, you just can't do your best. So you want to keep that in mind when you're talking to your learners. There are times, though, when the Northstar assessments just aren't the right vehicle. So it could be if someone's English language level, reading level is very low, and they would get frustrated at using the Northstar assessment, or if their digital literacy level is very low, they might get frustrated too. So if that's the case, if you feel that the assessment is just not right for this person, we do have some options available in Northstar for you that can give you just kind of a quick overview of where they might be at in digital literacy, if they know anything. And so you can find these in your admin portal. Can anyone remember how to get into your admin portal? You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute. Where do I go if I want to get into my admin portal? Like a website, or if you're telling me if I'm a new staff person and I just got into the admin portal. Yep, that's right. So you're going to go into, you probably have a link that's saved that says admin.digitalliteracyassessment.org. Thanks, Tara. You also, if you forgot that, you can search for Northstar Digital Literacy. You'll come to our homepage, and there's a login button up on the top right-hand side. So we're going to go into the admin portal, and I'll show you where these screeners are. Excuse me. Well, it's going to pop right to it. So I want to show you where it is. In our admin portal, here's the admin portal. I am now under resources. You can see here the resources tab that's in the blue navigation bar. And I'm going to go to other resources. And if I click on the view other resources, and go all the way to the bottom, here are the screeners that I'm talking about. So if we click on the first one, this is kind of more of a paper and pencil kind of screener. So let's say you don't have a device available to you, or again, there's some of those, maybe other issues. But if you want to just get a quick idea, maybe you don't have enough computers for your whole class. Here you're asking people to, you're just kind of seeing what they know, and they're kind of going through a couple of questions and answers that can maybe help you. Also, if you need to translate this into another language and you have someone on staff who's able to do that, it's a little bit easier to do this with this paper and pencil assessment, quick assessment screener. And then the interactive screener, this is asking people to show you how to do things. So they might not know all the words. They might not be that able to do things on the screen, but that you can see if they know how to turn the computer on, if they know certain keys, if they know how to use the mouse, if they know how to use the internet. So you're trying to discern if they are starting from absolute zero or if they have a little bit of knowledge. So these can be helpful to you. We talked about proctoring last time, and we're going to talk about proctoring again. Proctoring, it can happen in person or it can happen remotely. And there's kind of basically two ways to do proctoring, but they look similar to the learner, similar but not the same. So just in case you have any questions about how to do remote proctoring and how to kind of set that up so the learner has everything they need on their end, and you go through the video conferencing, does anyone remember where we can find those documents? So I go into my admin portal. I'm looking for that information on remote proctoring. What tab here in the blue navigation bar would I look under? And again, feel free to either write it in the chat or unmute. So I'm about to start remote proctoring, but I kind of forgot how to do it. Where could I go to find information on how to do it? Any thoughts? It's not a trick question, so feel free to take a guess. One of these tabs here in the blue navigation bar. Resources, yes, very good, thank you. So I go to my resources tab and I can go to proctoring assessments here in the middle, view details and manual. And then here it would talk all about proctoring assessments here under part 2. You can see proctoring assessments. I can also go to this green ribbon here where it says info on remote proctoring and resources to quickly get there. And then it's under bullet point 2. Here's best practices for remote proctoring and remote test taker checklist. That's specifically about, kind of getting ready to do remote proctoring. And then in the manual itself, it would talk to you about how to do that. So it gives you, directions, it gives you screenshots that make it pretty easy to remember how to do that. All right. So there are 2 ways that a person can be proctored, and one is in person. And so there are a couple of things that you need if you're in person proctoring. What's one, if you're going to proctor an assessment, a digital assessment, what's one obvious thing that you are going to need to have at your location? Let's see. You need your proctor pin. Yes, that is true. You do need your proctor pin. That's a tough one, but a computer. Yep, you need a computer, a laptop, or a Chromebook. So those 3 devices are fully compatible with Northstar assessments. If you only have tablets, for example, You can still give people the assessments. There are some drag and drop questions that they just won't be able to do. And so you just have to know that going into it. But you'll still get useful information as to what they know and what they don't. But so you have your computer, you have your proctor pin, which is a little more advanced, your location pin, someone said, and we'll look at those two things. Sometimes people like to play the audio on the Northstar assessments. So what would you need to help out with that if you're, in the middle of a busy room or there's other people there? Headphones, yes. So either you provide them or they provide them, but headphones, again, if you're going to be using the audio, or if the learner is going to be using the audio, are a really good idea. There are, you also, so we have these two. Can you think of anything else that you will need? And the other ones are a little trickier. You may not remember them. So we'll kind of just go through it, I think. But you talked about that location pin. And so the easiest way actually is to bookmark your launch page. And that's unique to your organization. And it will then automatically, when someone takes an assessment using that launch page, it will all be funneled to your organization, all the information for your reporting purposes. And then you also want to have a copy of the Northstar Testing Code of Conduct. So, and that's basically you're reading that or paraphrasing that to the learner. And it's saying that they're not going to use any notes or their phone or someone else helping them, and that they are who they say they are. And that's pretty much what it says. So let's review where you find that launch page. So it's in your admin portal. And it's under the assessment tab. And here, right here, where it says assessment launch page, here it is. And so you can bookmark that on the computers that are at your site. And then when someone comes to take an assessment, they just go to that bookmark, and that's kind of the easiest way to do it. So from the learner's perspective, what they're going to do is they're going to come up to your computer, and they're going to, you're going to direct them to that website. And then if you're working with just one or two people, you're going to want your proctor pin. So for those of you who have gone through the proctor training, which is about a 15-minute, 20-minute video, and then you take a little quiz, you will all have a unique proctor pin. Remember, it's unique to you, and you don't want to share it with anyone, especially learners, because then you don't want someone putting in the proctor pin when you're not actually there proctoring. So keep that safe. But if you're at the computer with the learner and they are at the launch page, they'll be seeing this. They won't see the warning. That's because I'm dual purpose here. But they'll see the name of your school here, and then your address, and then they'll see that proctor mode is off. And so what you're going to do, if you're in person with them, and there's only a few of them, you're going to click on validate computer via PIN. You're going to enter that yellow proctor pin that we saw on the other page, and you're going to authorize it. And then you can see the proctor mode is on and they're ready to go. So then you're going to instruct them to scroll down. You can see that I am logged in, which they might be. If they aren't, they can always log in if they have been added to the learner management system. If they haven't, they can just put in their first name and last name. Just remember that if they're not entered into the learner management system and they put in their first and last name differently when they take different assessments, they won't be associated with the same person. So for example, if someone's name is Benjamin and the first time they put in Benjamin Green, and the second time they put in Ben Green, the system will think they're different people. So that's the advantage to having them added in the learner management system. It's always tied to their account. But you'd have them scroll down, and here they'd click on whatever assessment they're going to take, and then you tell them to go ahead. And as you're proctoring, you're watching them then, right? And then when they're done, they'll get the results page, which we'll talk about. And you just need to remember to end the proctor mode so that someone else doesn't come along when you're not there and take an assessment. So you just click end proctor mode. So on their part, all they have to do is, really sit down at the computer, and you have that page bookmarked, and then they're waiting to take the assessment. Now, they can also go in through Northstar. They can log in. So if we go to our homepage, a Northstar homepage, which looks like this. Up here, it will say log in. And they can, this is how they would access the self-directed online learning. This is how they would access their dashboard. And they can also access the assessments through here if they prefer. So here they can log in and they add their email address and the password they've created, and they log in and they're going to go to their dashboard. They won't see this. I have several different options and I'm an administrator. So what they would see though is they would go right to this question and then to their dashboard. And then from here, they could take an assessment. It could be proctored or not. But if they click on take an assessment, again, it takes them to your school specific URL and you can see proctor mode is off. So again, you could enter your proctor PIN here and the validate computer via PIN and be the same kind of experience for them. If they are remote or if you have a whole class, and it would be annoying to go to each computer and enter your PIN, and it would be time consuming, you can add your proctor PIN in kind of remotely. And what that looks like for your learner is you're going to give them that URL. So again, it might be on the computer if you have, like, say, a class of 10 people, maybe you bookmark that page on your computer. If you're doing this remotely, you can send this in the link, or you can have them sign into their account like I just showed you. And they're all going to be here looking at this page. And you can see proctor mode is off. So then you are going to, and I'm actually going to do this on a different screen so it's easier for you to see. So here I'm at your URL page. Just a second. And it says, proctor mode is off. So everyone in the class, proctor mode is off, or if I'm a remote learner, the proctor mode is off. And then you are going to go in to your admin portal, if you remember, into assessments. You're going to click on the view current proctoring session. So you're going to say, hold on, let me just start this. And then you say to your learners, okay, now on your screen, click on join proctor mode. So again, pretty easy for them. And then it should say, you can tell them, it should say you're waiting for me to let you in. And then you go ahead and you'll see the people. You'll press start proctoring. And what they will then see is that the proctor mode is on and it's green. So you want to make sure that everyone is seeing that. And then you can go ahead and again, start proctoring the assessment. You also always, when you're doing it this way, want to remember to stop proctoring when someone is done and end the proctor mode when everyone is done. So from the learner standpoint, fairly straightforward. Any questions about how they would do this? All right. So if we're remote proctoring, we need all those items that we talked about for in-person proctoring. We need 4 other things. So we need to have, they need to have some video chat platform program, either Zoom or Skype or GoToMeetings or Teams, whatever you use. The learner will need a webcam so you can see them. You'll have to have a way to chat with your test takers, either through chat or letting them unmute. And then if they are going to be using the audio, you want to make sure they know how to mute their microphones so that other people aren't hearing the audio through your computer. Again, you can provide them the test taker checklist, which is what we just saw. Provide some kind of support for the video platform. So whether it's phone, WhatsApp, email, however you normally would talk to them, so that if their video platform isn't working, they can reach you. And then make sure they're comfortable using the video platform. We talked about the launch page already and how to activate proctoring. So we kind of talked about that already. And again, you're going to check their ID. So you're going to, that's one of the things you want to make sure that they have when they come. They know from the code of conduct that there's no notes allowed. And then you start the proctoring. When you do the proctoring, you don't have to watch them take the test, but it's helpful. I mean, you have to be there and you have to be monitoring so that you make sure they aren't using notes or their phone or someone's helping them. You don't have to watch their screen if you don't want to, but it is sometimes really helpful if you have the ability and the time to watch what they're doing, because that way you can see what questions are difficult for them and what you might have to work on together in terms of what needs to be learned. And or how they're answering questions. Maybe they're getting confused by the vocabulary, for example, in the assessment. As a proctor, you cannot help them with the assessment other than, if they ask you how to go to the next page or something like that, but you can't actually help them with content, obviously. Well, when someone finishes the assessment, here's that results page that we talked about before. And you can point out to them, that this is their score. Does anyone remember what you need to pass in Northstar? What percentage? In case I'm a learner and I ask you. Higher than 80, 85. You need 85% to pass. That's right. So if a learner is asking, well, what was it? It's 85%. The other things that you often will get questions about and that are good for you to know are that, here on the left-hand side, these are the standards that have been mastered. It's good for you to know that the standards don't correlate one-to-one with the actual questions. So if someone gets question 1 right, which they may not necessarily pass standard 1, because standard 1 might be in several different questions. And also some questions have several different standards. So just know that there's not a direct correlation. The other thing for you to realize is that some questions are weighted because they might have multiple things that someone has to do. So on one assessment, if someone got, I don't know, 16 out of 20, they might get an 85%, whereas on another assessment, they would need to, they would have to have 18 out of 20 to get the 85% because they're differently weighted. So some people might say, but I got the same number right on this assessment. It's because the questions are weighted differently. The other thing that you can point out to them is that they, if they want to, and they're signed up in the learner management system, they can go to the barbell here to the right and click on practice, and we'll take them right to that piece in the self-directed online learning. So if they want to do it right away, they can do it here. If they wanted to do the whole module, let's say they got like a 20%, they could go up here to where it says go to NSOL, and NSOL stands for Northstar Online Learning. If they passed and they wanted to claim a digital badge, which is like a micro credential, you could do that here for them and then enter the place that their badges go to. And you can also print out a result of this results page, or you can also print out this results page as well. They and you can access it at any time. So if you don't print it out and you want to look at it some other time, you definitely can. So we talked about logging in and how they'd go to the Northstar homepage, which is that digitalliteracyassessment.org, and log in the upper right-hand corner. One thing to know about is when they log in, they'll get this question, unless it's something you've turned off completely for your whole school, that says, where are you? And it's good to kind of instruct them that if they, you should all kind of have a consistent way of doing this. But to click yes, if they're in a class or school where their time, you might already be keeping track of it. And then click no if they're outside of class or school. And that's because, as we saw last time, there is a report that will differentiate that time between what they're spending in class and what they're spending outside of class on the self-directed online learning. So just know that. So let's, well, I'm going to pause. Are there any questions about how the learner might experience the assessments, taking an assessment? And if you haven't yet, I would highly recommend that you do take an assessment so you can see what it's like. All right. You know, sometimes it's takes a while to write in the chat box. So if you are writing something, keep writing and we'll get back to it. But let's now talk about the learner dashboard and how to present that to your learners. So the learners, once they log in, they get to that dashboard. That's their kind of home screen. And it's going to show them a couple of things. So here's the dashboard. You can always look at your own dashboard. So for those of you who are new to Northstar, when you're added to the Northstar system, to the admin portal, a learner account is automatically created for you. And so you can access that by going to your name here and the drop-down box and go to the, it will say, I'm already in here, but it'll give you an option for Northstar online learning. And that's the way you can toggle between yourself, you know, as in the admin portal as a staff and yourself as a learner. So always helpful to get familiar with what the learners are seeing. And this is what they are seeing. And so you can explain to them initially that here are all the assessments that are available to them. If your school decides that you don't want to make some assessments available to them, you have the option to turn off whichever ones you want to. So if you feel like we don't think they're going to need to take career search skills, for example, you can turn that one off. I personally don't see a need to, but sometimes organizations feel that it's confusing to learners, or they want to kind of more regulate which ones they take, and that's a valid argument. So tell them that the assessments are here. This outer ring on any of the assessments shows them what their score was if they took an assessment, what their best score was. And the inner ring shows them how much of the self-directed online learning they've done. So you can use that as an instructor to talk about, you know, next time we meet, I want you to have done 50% of the self-directed online learning, for example. These little lock icons, if you hover over them, there are several different sections in each of the topics. So, and they're in what we call sections. And so you can see here as I hover over this, this is talking about staying safe online is one, connecting to the internet is another one, and using the internet is a third one. And just to show you this, if I go into details, we'll come back to here, but you can see that here are those in bold, in capital letters, here are those three sections: connecting to the internet, using the internet, and staying safe online. So that's what that is referring to. But the locks mean if it's locked, it means that this person hasn't gone through the learning portion of that section. So they haven't completed the, you know, the instructional piece. If it is unlocked, it means that they have completed the instructional piece, but not done the little quiz that's at the end. So if you remember, Northstar set up, well, you'll have this section with a couple of standards. There'll be instructional piece and a practice piece, and then there'll be a quiz. And then the quiz will say you're ready to go on in the module or go back and review these things. And then at the end of those three sections, there'll be another quiz that will say you're ready to take the test or go back and review X, Y, and Z. So this is just kind of telling the learner what they have done and what they haven't done yet. And then if they see a check mark and hover over it, that means that they've completed the instructional piece, they've taken the quiz, and they've passed the quiz. So the one thing that I was confused by at first, to be honest, is that I thought the ring kind of went with the icons, and that isn't the case. So you might, if someone's confused by that, you might want to just explain that if they hover over it, it will tell you what that icon is meaning for that section. Here again, they can take the assessment like we saw. And if they go into details though, they can see some more options. So here I am on the practice tab. You see I have 3 tabs here. If I want to just start the whole module from the beginning, I could click here on Start Practice. If I want to retake the assessment, I can also take it from this page. If I scroll down, these bullet points are kind of, and these titles are kind of showing me the standards in Northstar. And so if I wanted to review what is the internet, I could click here and it would go right to that section. If I wanted to review filling out an online form, I could click on this bullet point and again, would go right to that section in the module. So this is helpful for the learners if they want to be specific about learning different topics, if they want to review things, or it can be new. And also as for instructors, you can point out that, you know, what you would like people to work on. So you can say, I really want you all to spend 10 minutes working with identify and work with tabs and windows today before we go to our lesson. Or before I see you in class, I want you to do that at home. So a good way for you to kind of assign information for them to work on. If they go to the standards tab, this will show them which of the standards they did not pass when they took the assessment. And then over on the right, if they've done the self-directed online learning for it, or if they have not yet. But again, they can always review anything they want to by clicking on the barbell to practice it. And it will take them to that section again in the self-directed online learning. If they go to their assessment history, this is going to show how many times they've taken the internet basics. So I'm on internet basics. I can see that here. And it's going to show how many times they've taken it. If they've taken it 5 times, all of those assessments will be listed there. And it will tell them their score, if it was proctored, if they got a certificate. And here it would also allow them to export that digital badge to a digital backpack in Badger is what we use, which is pretty common. If you click on this date, if they click on this date, they are taken to that results page again. So if they ever want to see it, they can click on the date of the assessment and they're taken back to the results page. And then you can see it tells them that it was proctored or not as well. Any questions about kind of the learner dashboard? So to review, there's that home screen. It shows you your progress on the assessments and on the self-directed online learning. And then those little icons, lock means you haven't finished the practice piece yet. Unlock means you finished the practice piece, but you haven't done the quiz. And the check mark means you've done the quiz and passed. Talked about how you can click on details to get into, a learner can click on details to see more information on their progress. On the practice tab, that was that first tab. There's a list of lessons and the standards. And on the standards tab, that shows the red X or the green check mark for the standards if you pass them or not. And then on the assessment history, that shows the tests you've taken, when you've taken them, and if you've earned badges and certificates. So as we then want to talk to our learners about using the self-directed online learning, there's a couple of different buttons in the self-directed online learning that they may or may not know how to use. So it's really, again, very important for you to remember that if people are coming to Northstar with really low digital literacy, they haven't had experience in digital literacy. And so a lot of these, icons that for us are apparent, wouldn't be to someone who had never had that. So you want to be, you might have a cheat sheet for them. You might go over this with them. But when you're talking to them, you want to make sure that you describe what the button looks like rather than using the terminology of what it does. So for example, the expand screen double arrow, someone may not know what you mean when you say look for the expand screen arrow. So again, really describe it. So the double arrow button, and tell them what it does. The curved arrow button facing left. So you're really describing what the picture looks like. And that's going to help them navigate the self-directed online learning. Any questions about that? All right. So then when someone does the review questions, they're going to, when they finish the lesson piece, they'll get a green check mark saying that they finished that piece of the lesson plan. And when they've completed all the lessons in a section, then the review questions are unlocked. You can see that little unlock picture there. Once they take the little quiz, it will tell them if they got the pieces, the questions in the quiz right or not. So here, one of the questions was, what are they? And they got that part right. You can see the green check. What kinds of computers are there? They've done the instructional piece, but they did not get the quiz question right. And the same for what is on them. So that's going to tell them what piece they got wrong. Now, one thing that is often frustrating to learners is it doesn't give the right answer. It just suggests that they go back and review the instruction. And we have found that there are a few quizzes where people have a really hard time. And we have decided that instead of making them go back continually after trying it a second time and not passing, then we'll give some prompts as to what the right answer might be, since this is a practice, not an assessment. If they want to return to their dashboard, they can just click on the Northstar logo at the top of the page, and that will get them back to the first page of their dashboard, the easiest way to do it. So if you want to see where that is. So if I am here, I'm in the standards tab, I want to go back to the first page of my dashboard. If I click on the Northstar logo, and then go back to the first page. So not really apparent. So that's something you'd want to talk to your learners about. So our next piece that we're going to do, unless you have questions, is we're going to take a look at the Northstar curriculum, where to find it, what's in it. And then, like I said, we're going to go through where I'm going to be the instructor and you are going to be my participative learners. So you will have to unmute at this point. And we're going to go through it as if you are digital literacy learners. So you can see what that experience is like. So we're going to use a real example, Internet Basics Lesson 7 on Internet Privacy. We're not going to go through the whole lesson because if you remember me saying the other day, an entire lesson takes about 2 hours and we don't have that much time. So we're just going to go through some bits and pieces of it to give you kind of a good idea of what's going on. But what I want to show you is where to find all this information for when you're the actual instructor. So if you remember, well, does anyone remember where you can find the curriculum? So I'm here in my blue navigation bar. Where would I go to find the curriculum? See someone wrote in the chat. Resources, yes, great. So I'm going to go into resources and I'm going to go, you can see over here in the middle on the right of my screen, it says Northstar curriculum, and I'm going to click on view Northstar curriculum. So there are, Northstar likes to, we're an education institution and we like to help educate. So there is a lot of information on how to use the curriculum here. So if you are new to, the curriculum, if you're new to teaching, if you're using volunteers, there is this, or if you just want to look and see what Northstar says, there is this teacher guide that will talk you through the kind of various parts of the lessons that are in every lesson, and how to set that up and how to do that with your with the learners in your class. Also, if you're going to be teaching virtually, there's some tips on just how to do remote teaching if you haven't done that at all, or if you haven't done that very much. And then this sample agenda for the first virtual class is really a checklist. So if you like checklists, this is great for you. And it kind of tells you, what you need to do to make sure you're ready at the beginning of class, what you need to teach people if they've never done virtual learning before on your system. And then, just kind of getting started. So those are some resources for the virtual learning. But then underneath all that, these are all the various topics that we have the instructor-led curriculum for. And if you remember from a couple of weeks ago, we currently have 12 of the 14 instructor-led curriculums completed. I am waiting for any day to see the, oh, actually it's here. We have 13 now, so this happened like this week. We now have information literacy. So there's only one, your digital footprint, that we don't have the instructor-led curriculum for. So you are the first to see this on my screen, at least, that we have information literacy now available. If we were to click on one of them, they all look the same, but you can see they all start out with the scope and sequence. And the scope and sequence is going to tell you what skills are going to be learned in this unit, what the standards are, the digital literacy vocabulary. And then it's nice because if you're looking to teach just a specific standard or a specific few standards, it will tell you over here what lessons they're in. So if you're interested in standard 9, which is fill out an online form, you can see that is in right here in lesson 9 under online forms. So it lets you quickly move to a specific standard if that's what you want to teach. So then every unit is aligned with college and career readiness standards. And these are, academic standards that the field of adult education in some states has taken up based on K-12 kind of standards loosely, but it's made for adults. So if you're familiar with these, here, if you scroll down, it's going to tell you the skills that someone's going to learn in this particular unit, the high frequency academic words that they're going to learn, as well as the digital literacy vocabulary. And then if we scroll down, it will tell you which of the standards are present in this lesson and where you can find them in the lesson, in the unit. And so that is handy if you do use, these college and career readiness standards. We also have an alignment map for what in Minnesota are called ACES Transition Integration Framework, but they really are soft skills that you might use in work. So if we look at that, it will show you in this particular unit, these are the skills that are going to be learned. And then you'll see, in particular, what is the skill and where would you find it in the lesson. So that can help you kind of focus on that if that's what you're looking to teach. Here are all the lessons. And each lesson starts out with a overview, and we'll kind of look at that and then in a second, and then it kind of goes into the actual parts of the lesson that we looked at the first day. So then it would go on to the next, then it would go on to all the handouts and information that you share. And then that would be the end of the lesson and give you answer keys and things like that. So at the very end of the unit is this is a unit project. And this is very closely aligned with the college and career readiness standards. It's an optional project, but if you want to incorporate some academic style critical thinking and marry that into digital literacy, you can use this you can use the unit project. This happens to be Internet Basics. And so it's going to tell you which of those college and career readiness standards are in this particular unit. Again, the high frequency academic words, digital literacy words. And then you can see that it looks at it's going to look at 2 readings where the learners have to read them closely, read for the main idea, and then take what they've learned from the readings and what they've learned, the digital skills they've learned from the entire unit to do a project. And so that's kind of using, again, the academic side of things and then the digital skills that have been learned. So again, that's something that you can you can choose to do or not do. If you're going to be teaching this remotely, like we're going to be doing today, under the learning resources, here are all those handouts and things that you want to show on your screen, separated out from the lesson plan. You don't want to be showing the lesson plan right to the learners. You just want them to see what's important for them to see. And so by clicking here, you'll get those pages to do that. So I have, if you're going to teach remotely or in person, I would recommend printing out the teacher guide to have with you as you're doing the lesson. So I have one printed out here next to my laptop. I've also done it where I have 2 screens and I'll have it up on a second screen. But you as the instructor want to be be looking at the lesson plan, but you don't want your students to be looking at the lesson plan. That's not intended for them and won't make a lot of sense to them. So here's what that lesson plan looks like. To start out with, it tells you what standards are in this unit and the vocabulary that we're going to learn. And so today, like I said, we're not going to do this whole lesson. It would take a little too long, but we are going to focus on some of the vocabulary in this lesson. This technology concepts is telling you as an instructor kind of the objectives of this lesson. And then teaching tips, this is showing you just anything that you need to know that you may not, that are gonna help you get through the lesson a little bit better. And then the bottom part is really showing you what handouts you're going to make copies of if you're in person, or if you are online, you can also click here and get those handouts remotely as well. So we are now going to start. I am pretending that you all are a group of intermediate English language learners. And so we're going to go through this slowly. Obviously, if you have to tailor it to your audience. So if you have people who are pretty adept at learning and adept at English, you're going to go through it much faster. If you have people who are just beginning English, you are going to go through it much slower. So I get asked that all the time. Is it okay to, tailor this to my learners? And absolutely. I mean, you are all the instructors and you know what's going to work best for your learners. So I now want you to be the learners for this class. And today we're going to learn the vocabulary here in the third words that are listed here. And so I am going to read them out loud and I want you to repeat after me. So the vocabulary is secure. Can you say secure?
Sure.
All right, great. Unmute, yeah. Thank you. And then I gotta find my cursor. Not secure.
Not secure.
Very good. All right, so we're gonna start by talking about what we know about secure and not secure. So I want you to think about what kinds of financial or having to do with money or personal information that you have to keep safe, that you don't want to share with many people, maybe someone you trust like a spouse, but most people you don't want to share it with. What kinds of information do you have to keep safe?
Email passwords.
Yep, passwords, banking, I think I heard.
Social security number.
Social security number.
Medical records.
Some medical records you might want to keep secure. Maybe credit card numbers. Very good. Okay, so all of those things, you want to prevent most people from seeing that information. So how do you do that? How do you keep that personal information safe?
Don't share it.
Don't share it, right? So if I ask you what's your social security number, you might say, I'm not going to tell you. What are other ways to keep it safe? Keep it stored. I can't read. Keep it stored in a secure location. Yep.
Use good passwords that are not easily decodable.
Use good, strong passwords. What if I write down my social security number on a piece of paper?
Bad.
Not really a good idea.
It's not a good idea, right? Or if I do have some kind of statement and I want to get rid of it, I could, shred it, right? Or tear it up. So we're going to talk about how to keep your personal information safe online today, because there are times when you do need to enter that information. So, as I said, when you use the internet, you sometimes do need to enter that private, valuable information, just like we talked about, like your social security number or your credit card number. But you should only do that if you're using a secure website. So there are two ways that we're going to talk about today that you can know if a website is secure. First, the website address will start with HTTPS. So it's important for you to notice that if the website starts with just HTTP instead of HTTPS. So a website that starts with HTTP is not secure. So let's take a look at that. Oops. So here, a secure website starts with HTTPS, and a website that is not secure starts with HTTP. You also, on a secure website, you will see in the address bar a lock, which is circled here in green. If it says not secure, then it's not secure. So to know if a website is secure, you just need to see one of these two things, either the HTTPS or the lock. If you don't see both, that's okay. Just one of them means that it is a secure website. I want you to know that just because a website is secure doesn't mean it's good. So I can go to a secure website, but it could have bad information or incorrect information. I could go to a secure website and I could still get a virus. So a virus in a computer is just like a virus in a person. So we talk about the coronavirus a lot, COVID-19, that can make people sick. Well, there are viruses that can make computers also not work well. And so a secure website could have a virus, but what a secure website allows you to do is allows you to send that personal private information we were talking about, and other people aren't able to read it. So it's safe. So we are going to look at a handout, but now all of you don't have to do this. But this is what I would say to people who are remote, who may not have a printer. They might not have been able to print out the handouts, for example. So I'd have them write in their notebook. you know, that I have them write Internet Basics, Lesson 7, Handout B, and then down the page, right underneath each other, the numbers 1 through 6. Also, as now I'm talking to you as instructors, the words that I was using there are written out for me in my instructor guide. So everything I was saying to you is actually written down in the guide. And so again, that helps me as an instructor to know how to present this information to you. All right, so if you've written this down in your notebook, we're going to take a look at this. And I am going to, because this is just fun, allow you to put a stamp on which answers, or circle or whatever, which answers you think are correct. But let's first do the first one together. And if you don't know how to get to the stamp, if you go to your Zoom controls, and it will say, I think more, and it will give you the annotate option. And then you can do a stamp or, you know, pencil option, and it lets you create a stamp. So if I do stamp and I choose star and I do a star, you can see it. I can do it, but you can do it on my screen too. So if you want to practice that, go ahead, because it's just kind of fun for your learners if you're doing this remotely. So let's see if anyone can do that. So you're going to go to show your Zoom control. So kind of hover your mouse at the top of your screen. It is for me anyway. It might be at the bottom of your screen because I'm screen sharing. You'll get a black bar. It will say mute, stop video. And as you go along to the right, there'll be a pencil and it will say annotate. If you click on that, one of the options, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth option is stamp, and click on that and choose the stamp that you want. And then you should, I think you should be able to do it on my screen. May not be, depending on how we have it all set up, but can anyone do that? Anyone able to do that? Let's see. Annotate is for the screen share only. Yeah, so you would be annotating my screen share. But you should be able to do it. I should have let you do it. All right, are you seeing, and maybe it's just the way your Zoom is set up, but are you seeing where you'd unmute yourself? The kind of black bar where you'd unmute yourself? And then there should be an annotate option there. If not, we'll go on, but okay, so people aren't seeing it. All right, well, that's too bad because it is kind of fun. So depending on how this isn't my Zoom, my personal Zoom account. So depending on how your Zoom account set up, you can give people that option and then they can mark this screen for you. But since we don't have that, I'm going to clear my stars. And yeah, I think it does depend on the Zoom meetings. But we're going to come back here. And I want you to tell me, is this first one, number 1, is this secure or not? Secure. You can either unmute. Yep, secure. How do you know that?
Because it has HTTPS.
Right, very good. How about the second one? Is this secure or not secure?
Not secure.
And why not?
HTTP.
Very good. So let's see. Can someone else tell me about number 3?
Not secure.
Not secure, right? And why not?
Because it's missing the S on the HTTP.
Right. And you all are so good at describing the answer, but sometimes people will say, well, there's no S. And I'll say, but there's an S right here in the word snow. So again, it's just making sure, like you all were telling me that, you know, obviously was getting from you that you understand that the person knows that there can't be an S after the HTTP and getting them to verbalize that. All right. So how about number 4? Just shout it out. Secure or not?
Secure.
Yep. And 5?
Secure.
And number 6?
Not secure.
not secure, right? Because there's no S after the HTTP. So then our first answer should have been on your notebook. You should have written secure. And then as we go through it, here are the answers. And then I want you to write HTTPS is secure and HTTP is not secure in your notebooks. So let's go on to our next lesson. So here again, go to a different page in your notebooks. And I want you to write down, excuse me, Internet Basics, Lesson 7, Handout C. And again, number the, put the numbers in order. And we are going to go to, I want you to go to these websites and tell me if they're secure or not. So first of all, I want you to go to citypages.com and someone tell me if that is secure or not.
Secure.
It is secure. And how did you determine that?
Lock at the top of the page.
Very good. All right. How about Costco.com?
With grit and gusto, our students gained so much this past
Wait a
year.
second.
That was very nice recording. It is secure because you see the lock. Yep. All right. How about StarTribune.com? So you can see that as you're doing this, you're not only giving people the practice of determining if it's secure or not, but also the practice of searching, right? All right. So I think that people are saying this one is secure, Star Tribune. How about lilynews.com? What have people found out about that? Not secure? Do people agree with that? For lilynews.com? Yeah, so someone said mine says it can't be reached. Theresa said mine can't be reached. That is true. So this website is no longer in service. And I use this as an example to show that although the curriculum team is, checking these regularly, sometimes that will happen. But for your learners, it's good to know. So one thing that if they got that page, they would probably want to try again just to make sure they had entered the address right. But if they got again that didn't exist, that's something for you to tell them that sometimes web pages go dead, and the links aren't usable anymore. And then it's not secure, but that just make them aware that sometimes happens. It's not necessarily user error, it just sometimes happens. How about cost.com? Cost.com is secure, and how do you know? It has a lock. Yep. And how about yahoo.com? Is that secure or not? And Dolores said it is secure because it has a lock. Great. So as you're working through this with your, now you guys are quick, but with people who are low digital literacy, it will take them a while. But as you're doing this, you want to make sure and with anything with digital literacy, or I would say in general, that you're checking that they're not just giving you an answer, that they know why it's not secure or why it is secure, because that's really the more important piece than getting the answer right, is to understand the why behind it. So just kind of continually checking back with, why do you say that? Explain, why you're thinking that, can help them make sure that it's really cemented in their minds. So here were our answers. Everything was secure except for that one that didn't work. And now we're going to go to another page in your notebook, and we are going to write down these words. So first on top, the Internet Basics Lesson 7 handout D. And then number 1, the word secure. And number 2, the word not secure. And then once you've done that, here are some definitions. So which one of these means secure? Is it a window that does not track your history? Is it a website that starts with HTTP? Is it all of the websites you visited? Or is it a website that starts with HTTPS? Which one of those means secure? Let's see, a website that starts with HTTPS, right? Very good. And which one means not secure?
Website that starts with HTTP.
Very good. So go ahead and then you'd write those definitions on your on your paper. And then we're going to go back, and I'm going to, on my slide, I think I'm going to go back. And we're going to look at the objectives of the day that we went over at the prior to this lesson, because we're just doing a piece of the lesson, pretend. And we're going to look at to see what we did today and if we met that. So the one we were working on today was under We Will Learn. The third line there, recognize when websites are safe to share private information with. Did we learn that today as a class? Do you think? Yes. How do we know? What is one way we know that a website is secure?
The lock at the top.
The lock at the top. Mm-hmm. And what's a second way that we know a website is secure?
Because it starts with HTTPS.
Very good. And do I need to have both of them to make sure a website is secure?
No.
No, either one. And I know a website is secure. And so that's kind of an example of the lesson. Again, we looked at just part of this in the lesson plans themselves. There are pieces where you can pair learners up to do something together. If you want to, like going to breakout rooms. You can also, there's also a task piece. So you give everyone a task and then they do that on their own, and then they'll come back as a group and, discuss the results of the task. So there's a lot of chances in here for repetition and for practice, and you saw some of that. But again, that's helping people who don't have this background in digital literacy, helping them to really soak up the information and cement it in their brains. So what I was seeing then as an instructor is this. So what I saw is this. So it would show me, that front page that I showed you all, but then pretty much I showed you this warm up and the objectives, but then it's telling me what to say and what to do. So I was on, I think, model and explain, where was I? I'm trying to remember what page I was on because I have it printed out. This is the whole lesson. Sorry. Here, where it says secure versus not secure website. So you can see that it was telling me basically how to teach you about this and what to say to you about this. It was telling me then when to show the example. Again, what to say, show the example. And then we went down to something where we did it together and we looked at those website addresses to see if they're secure or not secure. And then what we did together as handout C was something that you would have learners do separately in a class. And then we did the vocabulary work. So what questions do you, and then at the end, here's kind of the wrap up. So going over how we know a website is secure or not. So what questions do you have or thoughts about how you might talk to Northstar with your learners or use Northstar with your learners? We've been together for a couple of weeks. What are you finding intriguing or challenging? And feel free to unmute. You don't have to type it all in the chat if you don't want to, but it really helps your colleagues, as we've talked about before. Some people are really good at brainstorming right on the fly, and other people like to take time to think about it and soak it in. But sometimes it's helpful for that cross communication as people are at different points in the process of deciding what they're going to do. So have any of you used the curriculum or plan on using the curriculum with Northstar? Or think you're not really sure how you would use it? So Cheryl says she hopes to start in spring 22 once her classes are assigned online. So sounds like, Cheryl, you'll be teaching remotely. And so I always say, like, it's really great if you can find a colleague to practice with, so that you aren't necessarily teaching students remotely for the Northstar for the first time. You can, maybe go over it with a colleague, or even just, like, I'll sit here and practice it out loud myself. But and it sounds like Dolores is going to plan on using it at Fayetteville. And Sherry's thinking about using with Basic Skills Plus. So one thing to think about is what you're going to teach, right? And so looking at the standards can kind of help you with that. If you remember, you can find all the standards. You can find them in each unit topic, but if you want to see them all at once, you can go to the other resources. And the second box is the updated standards. So here they are all in one place. And so you might be thinking, for this particular class or these particular, group of people, there are some things I want them to learn for sure. What unit are those skills in? So you can find that by looking at the standards. Another thing that I would say, if you're going to teach using the curriculum, I would recommend that to your class, that one of the first things you do is give that assessment as a pre-assessment to determine what people in the class already know. And then you can use that information to focus your instruction. So if the class, if everyone in the class or most of the people in the class have passed, let's say standards 1 through 6, you don't really need to go over that in the lesson plan, or you can go through that maybe more quickly and spend more of your instructional time on the standards they haven't passed. If you have someone in the class who, let's say most of the people are, know about 50% of it, but 1 or 2 people really don't know anything. If it's a topic where we have the self-directed online learning, you could maybe get them started on that so that they are being, able to catch up to the rest of the class and then attend also the lessons. So they can maybe do that on their own time. And likewise, if you have someone who's way ahead of the class, well, one, they can help their fellow students. So always, if you have someone teaching the skill, they're going to learn it more, obviously. But they could also be given the option to learn something else on the self-directed online learning if they want to, until they get to that part in the lesson that they don't know. So those are some of the ways you can integrate. Penelope is saying they're going to use it in their English as a second language classes. They are using it. That's good to hear. And then you're going to offer a second standalone class this spring. So that is a great point, because digital literacy is just another topic of learning. So you can incorporate Northstar into your ESL classes, into your, like, let's say you have a class on writing, you can incorporate pieces of Northstar into that. There's digital literacy opportunities in everything you're teaching. So you might say, I'm teaching an English language class and I want people to respond to me over email. So maybe you incorporate some of the digital literacy instruction on how to write an email, so that they can then answer maybe they have to write a paragraph on a topic, or, answer, give the definitions for some vocabulary words that have nothing to do with digital literacy, but you want them to do it over email. So think about how you can incorporate digital literacy into all that you teach, whether or not you're using the Northstar lessons, but just, start getting into that mindset of incorporating those skills into your regular instruction. So thank you for reminding me of that, Penelope. These are great ideas and great thoughts. Anyone else? Penelope, I'm curious as to what level of ESL you are using it with currently.
We're using it in the advanced ESL class. That way, when they're finished, they're walking out with credentials or badges that they can add to their resume.
Great, that's awesome. And I do get asked occasionally by instructors, how could I use this in like with beginning level students? I might have mentioned this, but what some organizations will do is they'll take, they'll again go through a lesson very slowly. They'll really build their English language curriculum around the vocabulary words that are in Northstar, not just the digital literacy, but just the words that someone is going to need to understand. Or they will, or they might show like the self-directed online learning to the class as a whole and go through it as a whole class, and maybe just tackle a slide at a time, learning all the words and what they mean, the digital literacy skills, do it as a class together, and then the teacher will have everyone practice doing it on their own in their own dashboard. So it's kind of getting that repetition and that practice. Another thing that what we have done at one of our schools is we were fortunate enough to have an instructor who spoke several languages, and she was able to work with some beginning students and translate Northstar into the language they were most comfortable with, and then teach it in English too. So she'd teach it in Somali in this case, and then in English. It was great because the Somali students could understand the digital literacy, but they also were really excited to learn the English terminology, and they started answering in English her questions. So it became kind of dual purpose, even though it was intended to be digital literacy class. Theresa says she plans on using it in spring semester with modifications for her in-person beginning ESL class. Yeah, I think that's really great. And what's also interesting I've talked in talking to other programs is, oftentimes just because someone is a lower level English speaker or reader doesn't mean they're low level digital literacy. So sometimes we have immigrants who are coming over from a country where their digital literacy skills are, better than mine. What they need from Northstar is the vocabulary so that they can ultimately at some point talk to work colleagues and use the correct vocabulary in English. So even though you may have a disparate levels of digital literacy in your, let's say, beginning ESL class, oftentimes it feels really good for those learners who are more skilled digitally to have to be able to help other learners in the class and learn that English vocabulary and teach those skills in English to their fellow classmates. That's often like a really exciting opportunity. Well, you all have great ideas. I'm glad to hear it. We talked about, prior to this, we talked about the proctoring. It sounds like a lot of you will be giving classes. Is anyone thinking about doing proctoring as well? Someone mentioned that they were going to give certificates. So in that case, you would proctor. Anyone else thinking about proctoring assessments? And kind of when you'd do that in the process? All right, so we have some people already trained as proctors, which is great. Anybody else thinking about doing it or already doing it? And where in the process where in the whole orientation or class or process are you doing it? Some people are already trained and they're ready for spring term. I would, like Cheryl was saying, and you can always practice on your colleagues too. So again, practice proctoring them and have them go through an assessment. It will make it, easier when you do it in person. Some organizations will do, we talked about the assessments in the first training. The assessments, there's 14, right? You don't have to do all of them. No one has to do all of them. You don't have to do them in any certain order. But many organizations will do the first 3, which are the basic computer, internet basics, and email. And a lot of times they'll do that kind of right as someone comes into the school, just to get a feeling for their digital literacy. So they might give them an English test, and then they might give them, depending on how they do on the first assessment, either just one if they really can't pass basic computer, or maybe some more, to get a sense of their digital literacy ability. And this is often helpful, even if you're not going to be teaching that much digital literacy per se. If you want people to be using your other distance learning platforms, it might be helpful, for some organizations will say you have to pass these 3 assessments in order to do distance learning, just so you have the skills to do that. Penelope was saying that all of their instructors are training proctors, and you had a professional development for everyone so that they can administer the assessment. That's a great idea. So it sounds like a lot of you are ready to proctor, which is great. And looking forward to kind of spring to start getting up and running. So that's really wonderful. And, again, start just, if you're not yet, haven't done it, start practicing with your colleagues doing proctoring, take those assessments yourself to see what they're like, so that you're ready for the spring. Think about how you're going to introduce the topic of these assessments to your learners, and what, as you're going through the standards, let's say there are some that you absolutely want to make sure that everybody knows, whether they pass the assessment or not. Maybe it's that you want them to know, I don't know, well, obviously 18, how to turn the computer monitor on and off, right? So that's something that you would want that standard everyone to pass. So if there are some things that you know at your location makes sense for you, to make sure everyone knows, you can start looking through the standards and choosing which those might be. And then again, you might say, it'd be great if we could get to, teaching someone Word. And so how could we incorporate that into what we're already doing? Or maybe we have people we know have passed these 3 assessments, and then they go to then we start incorporate the Word into your class or whatever it might be. So I know we had a couple of hours scheduled for this, but you all didn't have tons of questions, which is, I'm hoping, good. And so if you have any other questions, I definitely have time to answer them, or if you want to talk about other ideas. And if not, I am hopeful that you will find it fun to incorporate digital literacy into your, sounds like, spring terms, and that you'll enjoy teaching it. I personally find it really fun to teach. And even more than that, just seeing how much learners appreciate learning this knowledge is very rewarding. Daniel, do you have any other Dan, do you have any other last thoughts?
No, I think you did a great job. There was lots of tips in today's session, and I'm glad to hear so many are already using it.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, if then there are no questions, I will let you get an extra half hour of time to check your emails or whatever it might be. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Monday. And like Dan said, this is recorded. And I'm sorry, I don't remember where.
Yeah, it will be posted to the professional development page where we post everything.
Okay.
They're used to finding it there. It takes us a little while. Matthew's actually out today, so it won't be today.
All right.
Thank you so much, Theresa.
You're welcome. I hope you all have a wonderful time. And then I will see you, Dan, on Wednesday.
See you Wednesday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.